Tonight, we really appreciate you being here. This is our 5th annual College Admissions Representative Panel, and we are so thrilled to have these wonderful folks give up their personal time. Some of them just flew back from Atlanta this morning to come here and be with us today. So we really appreciate their presence. I want to introduce them to you, and then we'll get going with our agenda for the evening. My name is Kendra Cantrell. I'm the Director of Guidance here. And I'm thrilled to be able to work with all of you and your wonderful children. We're already having a great admissions season, already working with students on essays, applications, college lists, answering questions, emails, and drop-ins, making sure kids are feeling confident as they move through the process. So please know that we're all available to you, myself and all the other counselors, if you have any questions or concerns. So today we're going to be doing about an hour of prepared questions. These are going to range on topics, just general admissions, financial aid, extracurriculars, early decision, early action, just kind of a smattering of really important topics that these folks have a lot to say about because they're the experts. These are the people who are deciding if you, as a student, gets into the college or not. So you want to hear what these folks have to say about the process. After the hour of about prepared questions, we'll leave a little bit of time for you to ask any questions that you may have. And then we'll let them go back to their lives and have their dinners and be with their families and friends. So first I'd like to introduce everybody to you and then we'll get started. So first we have Stephen Dunn from the University of Connecticut. Stephen Dunn is an admissions officer at the University of Connecticut and is also a UConn alum. In addition to working at UConn admissions for the last 12 years, he also worked in the admissions offices of Syracuse University and Northeastern University, and he's a 15-year member of NEACAC. Steve is a resident of Sturbridge and has 3 children in the school district. So he knows what it's like to be a parent of high school children, and he's excited for his children to go through the college process, aren't you?
Wow.
He has a lot of knowledge, he's ready to share. We then have Audrey Smith from Smith College. She is the Vice President for Enrollment at Smith, and she oversees the offices of Admissions, Student Financial Services, and the Registrar. And she has over 30 years of experience in college admission. Prior to her role at Smith, Ms. Smith was the Director of Admissions at both Hampshire College and the Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, New Jersey. She's also on the board for the Coalition for Access, Affordability, and Success, which hosts a platform of college advising tools and an application accepted by over 100 colleges. She's also the better half of Greg Anderson, famed history teacher here at Tantascwa. She might share some embarrassing stories about him if we prompt her enough, right? The next person we have here today with us is Teresa Malone. Terry Malone is the Director of Admissions at Clark University, where she has worked there for the past 15 years. She's responsible for overseeing the process of applications, manages the recruitment travel initiative for the admissions office, and runs the application review and merit scholarship processes. And in addition, Terry serves as the assistant coach for the women's volleyball team at Clark as well. And then finally, we have Michael Mazeka from Westfield State. He is the Assistant Director of Admissions and a graduate of Westfield for both his bachelor's degree and his master's degree. And he's worked in admissions for over 10 years and has been at Westfield for the last 8. At Westfield, his primary responsibilities include managing the communication and data for the office, as well as assisting in the recruitment process for all levels. So can we give them a warm round of applause for being here? Thanks a lot. All right, so let's jump in with our first question. So what factors go into an admission decision? And for your institution, which are the things that matter the most? And kind of as a sub-question, can you talk about the importance of fit between the student and the institution?
I'll kick it off. So good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. So being a state institution here in Massachusetts, really the biggest factors that start off with our application process are GPA and SAT scores. We are bound by the requirements set by the state of Massachusetts, usually the sliding scale that you may have heard about already for the state university system. If you're looking at the UMass system, it's the similar scale, same principle though. We're looking first and foremost at your GPA, then we're comparing that to the SAT, ACT scores that you have. Depending on where you fall with your GPA, you may need to meet a certain SAT requirement. If you're a high enough GPA, there's really no worrying about the SAT requirement. If you're below, then you might have to fall within the scale. After that, it certainly comes into the letters of recommendation, college essay. Those are certainly factors that do come into play when we're reviewing applications. And while we still have to follow the sliding scale, there's certainly other factors that we want to consider. And when you're applying to a competitive program, those are things that we might take a look at. And I will say that in terms of importance of fit between the school and the student, you know, it's definitely important for us to feel that you would be a good fit for our institution, meaning GPA, SATs, but also would you be a good citizen for the university. But on the flip side, we have to be a good fit for you. So we would certainly want you to come and make sure that you would feel comfortable on our campus, make sure that you'd enjoy eating in our dining commons, things of that sort. So you're gonna hear us talk a lot tonight, but keep in mind, you want to make sure that while fit is important for you coming to us, it's also for us going out to you. So that's just a quick hits on Westfield for us.
At Clark, we use a holistic admissions process, meaning that we're going to look at all of the aspects that we ask you to submit to us. The most important thing is the transcript, and we'll talk more in depth with future questions about the things we look at in a transcript, but we look at both the courses that you've chosen to take and how well you did in those courses. Then we look really closely at the Common App essay that you write, the letters of recommendation that are submitted, the extracurricular activities and things you choose to do with your time outside of the classroom. Clark's a test optional school, so students do not have to submit SATs or ACT scores, but if they want to, we'll add it to the mix as something that we will consider, although it very rarely will override a decision. If everything else is really strong or everything else is really weak, those test scores can't really flip it too much. And I just agree with what Mike said about fit. It really is a mutual fit that we're looking for. It doesn't do anybody any good for us to admit students that we don't think will be a good academic or social fit. And it really doesn't do a student any good to choose to go to a place where they're not going to thrive. So that's definitely part of the process on both sides, is to figure out what is the academic culture like, what is the social culture like, and what schools are going to fit best with what you are looking for.
So I'm really tempted to say what she said, because Smith and Clark have a great deal in common, both as private institutions. We also are going to do a holistic review, and we are also test optional. So I'll just elaborate a little bit on what Carrie said, and agree with Mike as well, that all of the factors are going to be important. Your transcript is going to be the most important. It's primarily an academic decision. And so in looking at your transcript, we're going to look at the choices of the courses that you've taken and your trend over time, which we hope is either steadily high performing or on an upward trend. And if you've encountered something in your secondary school career that is unusual, you've hit a bump in the road, talk to us about what that is and why that is. And there's an opportunity in the application form to explain unusual circumstances. If you have unusual circumstances, take advantage of that. If you've just had a regular high school experience, we're really happy for you. That's what we really hope for. And in terms of fit, absolutely a two-way street. I will say that for Smith, because we are highly selective, we admit a little less than a third of our applicants, that fit becomes more important as we're choosing from more well-qualified applicants than we have spaces in the class. So we're going to try and get that. So put your best foot forward in the application and really let us get to know you.
Thank you. Good evening. I would echo everything that the three panelists have said. I'll maybe put it in order that we look at. Number one, we're going to look at the school. So we will look at the profile that Mrs. Cantrell and the guidance office provides us when you submit your application and when they submit your official transcript. We look to see comparatively how you are doing within your classroom, whether that's by class rank or by a percentage of how many students have a 4.0 to a 4.5 GPA, however it's done. We will look at the strength of schedule compared to what's offered at the school, and then we'll look at your grades. Average GPA at our school is one number. It's going to be a different number. You'll have 4 different answers, but we'll look at your grades. Then we will look at your test scores, SATs, ACTs, take them 2 or 3 times. I'm sure we require it, so we would encourage you to take it more than once. we'll take your highest math, your highest verbal, super score, if you will. Then we're going to look at your essay, and we will look to see what is it about you that you are willing to share about your journey through high school and about a possible major, where you want to go from college, how is your career path, where do you want that to take you. There's really no wrong way to write the essay. I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit, so I'll stop there. Extracurricular activities, we will certainly look at that, whether it's student council, sports, part-time jobs, volunteer work, you name it, put it down. Everybody pays attention to that. And then finally, recommendations. Every school will have different sets of requirements for either teacher recommendations, maybe one or two, certainly a guidance recommendation that will accompany the school profile. So we will consider all those factors. Again, using the term holistic review, you will hear that multiple times this evening. Those are all the things that we consider.
Great. A few of you touched upon the transcripts, and a few of you touched upon GPA. A lot of kids, panic is instilled in them when they see that GPA or when they think about that number having such an important, part of their future and their opportunities. Can you talk about how much GPA is kind of factored into your decisions, and do you recalculate GPAs for your school upon admission?
So at UConn, we will, where we used to do it a little bit more over the last couple of years, we are just going to take the grade point average that is reported on the transcript and compare that to the grading scale and the GPA scale that is offered on the school profile. So we will get a sense of where do you fit in amongst your class without necessarily having to know, I'm number 38 out of 242 students. Okay, we'll generally figure that out on our own. In a previous institution, we did used to recalculate grade point averages and put them on a 4.0 scale. We would weight the AP and honors courses accordingly because we did it ourselves. However, I'm quite sure at Tantascwa, they take care of that for you and include that in a weighted GPA versus an unweighted GPA.
Yes, at Tantascwa, we provide a weighted 4.0 GPA for all of your students.
And the reason weighted, so I'll just sort of say for Smith and to support what Steve has said, the reason weighted is important is that's going to help signify the strength of schedule. It's why it's possible. Our average GPA at Smith for the entering class was actually 4.1 because so many of our students came in with weighted courses, not because you had to be a straight A student. Believe me, there are students that have come into Smith that have B's and even C's on their transcript. But most of them have really challenged themselves in very demanding courses. And the weighted GPA tells us that. So you're going to hear holistic a lot. The other word that's really important to think of in a college admissions process is context. So we know Tantascwa. In my office, they know it really well because they look for recommendations written by Mr. Anderson and see if they can trip them up on something. No, but seriously, we know the school, but our interest in the context is how have students challenged themselves relative to the opportunities that are available at Tantascwa. This is a strong school with a lot of opportunities. You've got AP courses, you've got a broad range of courses to select from, and we're gonna expect that you've really challenged yourself. Some other schools may not have the same options, and so that context is gonna be very important to us. So what we will do is we will know whether or not the GPA that's been provided to us is weighted or not weighted. We will look at the number of advanced courses that you've taken relative to the number that are available in your school, because you can't take them if they're not available. And again, we're going to look at what's typical. Some places will limit the number of courses. We're going to understand that you're on a block schedule, so that's why you've only got 4 courses in the fall semester, and all of those kinds of things. So that context is going to be very important. We are not going to recalculate the GPA, but we're going to be aware of what it means relative to students at other very different kinds of schools.
At Clerk, we do recalculate, and we actually recalculate an unweighted GPA. We certainly care about the rigor, but we actually score that separately. So when we're reviewing a student's transcript, we give a score for the strength of the curriculum, and the more you've challenged yourself in the ways that Audrey was talking about, the higher that score will be. But then every student, we calculate an unweighted GPA on a 4.0 scale. And we do that just so that the GPAs have all been kind of normalized across different schools, across different curriculums. And so that when we say that a student has a 3.8 GPA, that's really reflective of the numbers of A's and B's and what the actual grades are. And we do count the rigor in that separate calculation. So it is important to us, we just separate the two out instead of combining them into the GPA calculation.
And at Westfield and across the state, actually, we do recalculate as well. We recalculate onto the 4.0 scale. We give extra weight for honors courses, AP courses, dual enrollment courses, anything of that sort. It's usually 1.0 weight for AP dual enrollment and 0.5 weight for the honors courses. And we use all 4 years and weight all 4 years equally. So first quarter, senior year grades, they count as a full year when we're looking at your transcript. So when we're doing the GPA recalculation, there are certain courses that we'll take into consideration. There are other courses we may not take into consideration. For instance, PE health, we will not count those courses. So if you get straight A's in PE, I'm sorry, it's not going to help. With the GPA recalculation, it's actually a requirement for the state universities to do that. And there is a way, if you go online, there's a state admission guide for everybody to look at. You can do the long way out if you'd like to see how your GPA would stack up. You can actually see what the grades are, how it's kind of factored in, do the calculations if you really want to get an idea of how you would stand when you're looking at the state universities.
That's great. So everybody does it a little differently, but everybody seems to kind of use what we provide and then kind of take that into consideration, kind of break it apart for Clark, or retool it completely for Westfield, so that's great. A few of you also kind of referenced all 4 years of the transcript. Some students, maybe they didn't have a very strong 9th grade. Do you look at all 4 years equally? Seems like Westfield, you're kind of weighting all 4 years equally, but for some of the other schools, do you take that into consideration? Do you look for trends? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so in terms of the actual GPA calculation, all grades are included in that calculation. But when we're actually looking at the transcript and evaluating the transcript, we absolutely look at, Audrey mentioned before, the trends within grades. So looking at, if weaker grades happen, when did they happen? And certainly it's better if your weak year was 9th grade. You're not the same student you were then anymore. You've hopefully matured academically, and so we're going to forgive that if we can in our evaluation process. We'll also look at particular strengths and weaknesses within the grades. If a student is overall a really strong student and has one, maybe minor area of weakness, we'll try to look at that. We'll look at the context of the grades within the school system. Every school might have more rigorous or less rigorous standards for how do you get that A. We try to take that into context. Try to take life into context. Sometimes, it is the junior year where the grades are maybe a little weaker, but maybe there's a real reason for that. There was a health problem where there was something else going on that kind of knocked you off track a little bit, and we look to see how you overcame those kind of things. So while in the GPA calculation, all grades are treated equally, I think that the humans looking at the transcripts are going to try to look at the trends and the context between them.
Thanks for using that context. I told you you'd hear it. Right. I'm going to add to that, again, ditto for Smith. One thing, especially in a block schedule system, is don't take your foot off the gas at the end of your senior year. One of the clear things in our offer of admission, we say that we expect you to complete the year at the same level of performance in the same program that you described to us. And we are very clear that if that doesn't happen, your admission might be in jeopardy. So it's really important that you kind of keep it through all the way through the senior year.
Steve said it all. In talking about rigor again, in talking about having a rigorous senior year, continuing to challenge yourself all the way through. Some students may feel like, I'd rather get an A in a college prep advanced class than take that AP and risk getting a C. I don't want that on my transcript. I don't want that to negatively impact me for admissions. What's your take on that? Is it better to challenge, I mean, of course it's better to get an A in AP, we know that. But let's say it's a little bit outside of their comfort zone and they're wanting to push themselves, or they're afraid of pushing themselves because they don't want to falter a little bit. How does that play into admissions for you all?
Well, I feel like I'm at my kitchen table here. So I'll start by saying a D is still a D, and it's going to count as a D. However, whether you are in mostly APs, honors courses, a mix, college prep, it's all college prep. And when you get to college, presumably those courses will all be difficult, in theory. So, there is if you have the chance to challenge yourself and succeed, take it. However, as Mrs. Cantrell is saying, there's the inherent danger of not doing well. How is that looked at? A D is a D, okay? If within the first couple of weeks of the semester or of the school year, you see that you are in hot water, time to make a quick appointment and see what can be done about it. Either changing the class, if that's possible, or seeing the teachers, which I know they're available after school, getting a tutor, either within the school or privately, whatever it takes to continue to do well and rearrange whatever priorities may have been in the first couple of weeks of school to adjust and atone for the first couple of weeks of school, to work hard. And then at the end of the day, if you get a C+, you get a C+. If it's an honors course, then again, the school will adjust the grades accordingly. Yes, it's nice to see a challenging schedule. We all love to see that. However, you're preparing yourself for the following year. Just, always thinking ahead.
And I would say for Smith, while we certainly wouldn't expect that all of your courses were the most advanced, we would expect that at least some of them would be. And that's going to be true for any highly selective school. A student that has straight A's and is not taking a single challenging class is really risking offers of admission at the most selective schools. Certainly there will be offers of admission out there, but the most selective schools are going to expect that you've really pushed yourself in some levels in those areas of strength. So you may be a really strong math science student and less strong in the language arts, in which case your accelerated courses are going to be in the math science area. It may be the reverse. And for some, it may be that really the challenging courses in all areas are the most appropriate for you, but for most students, that's not going to be the case.
So we've talked about transcript, we've talked about GPA, we've talked about rigor and challenge. Let's move on to another component of the admissions process, and that's standardized testing, everybody's least favorite thing ever. How much does testing play into your admission? Some of you are test optional, so obviously that is taken into consideration. So for those of you who are test optional, why? Maybe why did your school move to that model? And for those who are not, can you talk about the impact of testing on the admissions process? And what do you say to a kid who's not a great tester? How do they maybe strengthen their application in other ways?
So as I mentioned, Westfield, we do require SATs or ACTs. So what I'll say is that it does play a role in the admission process, and that's, again, with the sliding scale, or even for some of our more competitive programs like the nursing program, we do look closely at SAT or ACT scores. So it's not the best measure, but it's the measure that we have, and unfortunately we follow the Department of Higher Education's guidelines. So that's really why the main reason, one of the main reasons that SAT scores definitely still play a role in our admission process. But if you're not testing well on the SATs, one, you're not alone, so that's something to keep in mind. But two, there are a couple of things that I would certainly recommend. One, with most of the schools you're going to see that require SAT scores, they super score. So we recommend taking the SATs more than once. If the SAT is giving you just fits and starts, try the ACT. So the SAT right now tests evidence-based reading and writing as well as a math section. The ACT tests science, math, history, and English. So you might find that you're better in history and science, and that could certainly improve your grade. So it's worth looking at the ACT. I also recommend use free resources that you can. Khan Academy links up with the SAT, so you can certainly use those resources to try to boost your score. And I know this one's really, really hard to do, but try not to put so much pressure on yourself when you're going through. There's no penalty for wrong answers on the SAT, so if you're going through the test, do as best as you can, and then you get to the last few minutes, you got a couple of questions. There's no penalty for guessing anymore. So really just make sure that you're taking your time, really thinking it through. Try to de-stress yourself a little bit. I know it's really cliche to say that, but that's really the best advice that I can try to give you, is to just don't think of it as, oh my God, this is going to be the rest of my life and this score is going to define me moving forward. Think of it as more along the lines of, you know what, this score is going to help me figure out what I'm going to be capable of, maybe which school can work for me, what school might be a little bit of a reach. And then also, you can also think, you know what, the SATs just hard for me, I'm going to go a different route to get to the school that I ultimately want to get to.
So Clark went SAT optional, I think it was about 7 years ago, and philosophically, we had always sort of looked at them in the context of what they are. They were filling in bubbles on a Saturday morning, and is that the best predictor of who's going to show up in our class every day, who's going to engage in the work that they're doing, who's going to be working with professors on really interesting projects. And so we were always looking at them in the context of what they were and thinking that the transcript was a much better predictor and the recommendations were a much better predictor of the kind of student that we wanted at Clark. But we were hearing more and more questions and anxiety about tests, and more testing was happening. You know, students were taking SATs multiple times, and they were taking the subject test, and they were doing maybe trying the ACT if they didn't like their SAT scores, and they were doing AP exams, and then MCAS, and it became almost overwhelming for some students. So we decided to say, if for some of our students, we're ignoring them anyways, why even have them have the pressure of having to decide whether they need to submit them or not, when they might be really proud of their transcript and the work that they've done for 4 years. So we just decided, we also did a lot of research internally. There's a lot of research externally, but we wanted to look at how students were performing when they came to Clark, and we really found that the transcript was the best predictor of who was going to be successful in our classroom, and that when you just looked at SAT scores, there really was no predictability there. And now that we've been doing it for a while, we've also been able to track retention rate and graduation rates. And the students that don't submit scores, or that we admit with low scores, are doing just as well as the students that had similar transcripts than them. So we feel really strongly that we can make good decisions without them. If you're proud of your scores and you want us to see them, certainly you can submit them. But if you think your transcript and who you are as a person is enough, we think that's enough as well.
That's a great answer. Yeah, great answer.
Horrible way to spend a Saturday morning. And just polling the audience very quickly, the students, how many seniors are in the audience? Seniors? Okay. Juniors? Sophomores? Okay. Future all-star right there. Okay. As a parent, I'm going to take the liberty of asking a parent question here, and the seniors can maybe chime in. So we are in discussion of, do I take the PSAT early on in the junior year, or do I take the SAT? That's a kitchen discussion. I am kind of leaning toward let's initially go with another PSAT, even though it doesn't count really for anything, but just to get one in the books and take a look at that, but also looking very seriously at the fact that a student can take the test 2 to 3 times, and we can still take the highest math or verbal. Our school does rely on the tests. We have increasingly over the last 5 to 10 years, it's become more and more important, simply for the factor of we are receiving a larger number of applications for our school, and even though we are, all schools are building new residence halls and tearing the older ones down and building new ones and saying that they're state-of-the-art, which is great, we're still really only bringing in the same number of students. So with some of the more selective schools, sometimes it does come down to test scores, because a lot of students have great grades. A lot of them are very involved. A lot of them are leaders in the community, and sometimes it will come down to test scores, and sometimes it will come down to 10 points, whether or not somebody is admitted to the main campus, to a regional campus, to, as Mike was saying about the nursing program at his school, the same with ours. If you apply directly to a major, they will look at that. And in specific programs like engineering or mathematics, we will look at how you do on the math SAT. Okay, English majors, somebody's applying directly for that program. Yeah, we're going to take a look at the verbal SAT scores. How did you do? Also, of course, we're going to look at the grades and the courses that you took in high school, but the scores are there. The scores are definitely there. And I will, on a final note about test scores, sometimes in addition to admissions, those SAT scores are used for scholarships as well. We will look at them, and I've seen it where a student didn't receive a $10,000 or $20,000 scholarship because they were off by 10 points on the SATs, even if you've taken them 3 times. Okay, everybody's got 3.7 GPAs or 4.0 GPAs, wherever that threshold is, and they're taking great courses at great schools and they're very involved. Sometimes it will come down to 10 points. Okay, so again, we're all encouraging everyone to look at taking the test one more time if you can, and then immediately sending those scores to the schools in which you're applying to for your seniors.
So I think from the variety of answers, it's good to remember, you know, what are the schools I'm applying to looking for? And does that fit with me and my strengths and my interests and my passions? You know, are you wanting a school that will look at you more holistically, or are you wanting a school that's going to have it maybe come down to 10 points, you know, for the scholarship? Because everyone's kind of looking at kids a little bit differently. So to move on from testing, let's talk about the essay. And we talk about context, we talk about holistic. The essay's a strong area for those. What do you look for in an essay? And when you're reading hundreds, maybe thousands of essays, what are you hoping kids will not write about or will avoid writing about so that they really stand out and you remember them and maybe let them in?
Yeah, I'll give this one a start. First of all, everything we've talked about up till now has mostly already happened. You've already had your course schedule, you've already had 9th grade, this crowd, you've had 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. You've taken your test, or you will have taken your test by the time you apply. So the essay is the one piece here going forward where you're going to be shaping how we look at you. And depending on the application form you use, an individual institutional application, the Common App, or the new coalition application, there will be essay prompts. And it's really important that you think about what's going to reflect you most, and you know, where you're going to tell the best story about you. What I think is most important, and we, again, like everything else, are going to give some different answers, is that this is an authentic essay in the student's voice. You know, appropriate to a college application. So think a little bit that it doesn't have to be the most serious thing, but we do read a lot of essays about the big game, so you may want something a little bit more original than that. But what you want to write about is something that is important to you. And you want to think about it, select your topic, write a first draft, put it away, put it in a drawer, take it out a week later. It is absolutely fine for you to have somebody proofread that essay. It's an important piece of writing. That may be a parent or a family member, that may be a teacher. But again, it is you, the student's essay. And parents in the room, I can tell when you have edited it, because some parents can suck the life out of a college essay.
I would just add to that, I agree completely. When thinking about an essay topic, don't stress too much about finding that pure, unique thing. If we did the math of how many essays we have read over our years, it's a lot. And I'm sure at some point we've read an essay like that. But what makes it unique is you. It's your experience. And certainly there are some, the big game, summer camp, those kind of things that probably get done a little more often. But this year, one of the best essays I read was about winning the state championship game. And the kid was really clever and wrote it from the viewpoint of the soccer ball. And not everyone can pull that off. This was an exceptionally creative piece of writing, but it was a different twist on what otherwise could have been like, okay, great, you won the state championship, nice job. But don't stress too much about finding that one unique thing. Sometimes people are like, well, I've never had that hard thing to overcome. What in the world am I going to write about? Like, that's okay. That's a good thing that you've never had some major life-altering thing to overcome. One of my favorite essays of all time was a young man who wrote about meeting his little brother for the first time. He was 6 years old when his little brother was born. He wrote this just sweet, charming essay about it. Very simple story that a lot of people can relate to, and it was his story. So it's important, it's a place where your voice can come through. It's definitely something you want to take time with, but don't stress too much about it, please.
Good advice. So moving on from the essay, and we're going to be having our essay writing workshop for students next Wednesday from 2:15 to 3:15 in the library with guidance and English teachers working with kids, so make sure you all come. But let's move on to the letters of recommendation. So we encourage students to connect with teachers who they've had more than once, who they've had recently, not freshman or sophomore year typically, it's just a little too far back, with majors that perhaps relate to the content area of the teacher that they're asking. What are you looking for when you read these letters of recommendation? What are you hoping to glean from them, and how does that impact admissions?
So, when I'm looking at letters of recommendation, first and foremost, I definitely want to see one from guidance, which usually guidance always writes one for you. I do like to see them from teachers who are subjects that are going to be what you're hoping to get into. If you're thinking about nursing, I like to see them from science teachers, chemistry, biology, one of those areas. I prefer to see them where teachers kind of know your strengths and weaknesses, so if everyone's asking the same teacher, you never know how well that person's going to be able to write, how many they have to write. It's worth asking early, and it's also worth asking people maybe who don't know you outside of the classroom, but know you better inside the classroom. As Mrs. Cantrell said, you know, teachers you've had more than once. So that familiarity piece is definitely something that I'd like to see when I'm looking at letters of recommendation, because I do want to learn a little bit more about you. Your transcript's telling me one story, your essay tells me another story, the letters of recommendation are telling me a third story that kind of helps piece this whole puzzle together of who exactly are you. So the letters of recommendation, getting them from teachers who know what you're capable of in the classroom, what you're good at, what you're not good at, that's also helpful too. I've read a great letter of recommendation about a student who struggled like crazy in math. And they went extra help all the time, and the teacher that wrote the letter of recommendation noted that. They noted how the student was always coming to them for extra help, and even though the student didn't get a great grade, the teacher thought that the student really put forth the effort. That actually resonates a lot more than, you know, just the run-of-the-mill generic letter of recommendation from the teacher who's written it for 6 other kids, and it's the same student, and it's the same thing, just insert your name here. So really getting that kind of familiarity piece really helps.
The final piece of the application packet is typically some kind of resume, which talks about the extracurriculars they've been involved in, community service. Can you talk about how you look at that resume and how that may impact, you know, offering admission?
So for Smith, which is all of our students live on campus, we're a residential community, and we really stress that learning happens inside and outside the classroom. And for that reason, the extracurriculars are going to be an important part of the decision. If you're looking at a whole group of very strong applicants, then the extracurriculars are going to make a difference. And depending on where you apply, there are a whole host of questions that you might want to know about the admissions process at a particular place. So for example, for Smith, we will give extra consideration if an athletic coach is really interested in a student, and so that's going to be a piece of the extracurricular activity that's going to really place some weight in the admissions decision if the coach is telling us that you're going to be an impact player. We also send off creative options to our art or literature faculty, and if they're going to come back and tell you, this is a student I really want to teach, that's going to make a difference. So if you've been really involved in dance or theater or music or any of those things, for us that's going to make a difference. For students that have held various organizational positions in clubs and organizations, be it the be it the person who's the president of a club, or be it the person who's regularly involved in the cleanup and the dance committee. That's talking about how students will be a citizen on our campus. And we're assembling a residential community, and so that citizenship on our campus is going to be really important to us. We're going to be, you don't have to have a long list, but we want to know what's the list that's meaningful to you, and that may be, maybe you tried something out in 9th grade and it wasn't for you, and so you have some new activities in 10th and 11th and 12th grade. That's fine, but we're really interested in the engagement, not just the list of activities.
So we've talked, Steve, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, to follow up and kind of getting back with your recommendations, you can certainly add a recommendation from an employer. Coach was mentioned, but if an employer, if you've worked since you were sophomore year at wherever, if you helped out anybody do mass motion, a couple of mass motion people, dance studios, okay, you don't have to raise your hands, but if you've helped out in the classroom, get a recommendation from the teacher, from the owner, okay? If some of you, waiter, waitress, or whatever around town, work at McDonald's, work at Burger King, work at Sturbridge Seafood, Porterhouse, wherever, okay, get a recommendation. That will carry with you for the next few years. If it's a coach, obviously teachers, but that will supplement the the resume that you are providing. And it's not just you stating that you have been exemplary in your community. Also, just highlighting, if you have been involved in an activity here at Tantascwa for 3 or 4 years, okay, those items should be top of the list. Okay, if you did drama for half a year, okay, maybe you include that, maybe you don't, but let's not put that first. Okay, the things that you are involved with throughout your career here, those should be at the top of the list.
Just one final point. We look very broadly at ways you've contributed to communities, not just your school community. So there's a lot of things you can get involved with here, marching band, athletics, student council, but some of you might be involved with things not associated with the high school. You might be in a church youth group, you might have a gold award for Girl Scouts, you might be volunteering at a hospital, and those things matter in terms of the type of citizen you are as well. I one time had a student said, I'm not really involved in anything, and I'm worried about that. And talking to the student, they weren't involved with much formally at the school, but they had a long list of things that they were really passionately devoted to outside of the school community. And that's as important to us. It's really how you're contributing to communities, whether it is a part-time job, whether it's your family community. Sometimes students aren't as involved in those traditional extracurricular activities because they have an elderly relative living with them and they help care for that person, or younger siblings, or whatever the situation might be. So again, like we talked about transcript, context matters. So we're trying to get that information when we're looking at extracurriculars also.
That's a great point, because I think there are a lot of kids who maybe they're not in a club here, but they're doing a host of things outside in the world, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, church groups, whatever it may be. That's a great point. I want to move now into demonstrated interest. We talk a lot to our students about, get out and visit those campuses. Go look at them, take the tour, talk with the admissions reps who come and visit us here at Tantascwa, make the phone calls to the admissions offices, not your parents making the calls, but you making the calls. Does that demonstrate an interest as a student, making those connections with your campus? Does that matter in the admissions decision for you all? Do you track that? Does it have an impact?
We do track it, and it can. It does not always. A student that's not academically or socially a good fit, it doesn't matter how much interest they've shown. But a kid on the borderline, a kid that we're really struggling with the decision, that has gone out of their way to show that they really want to be a clerk student, we're more willing to take a risk on that student. Again, we're not as selective as Smith, but we're admitting just over half of our students. So there are sometimes cases where there's two kids that academically and socially look similar. We don't have room for both of them. And we're going to lean in the favor of the kid that seems like they want that. So it won't always play a factor.
So I would say we're not looking at it when we're making an admissions decision. So this is where I think sometimes big data can be a problem. You could have an algorithm that would compute, well, this person, if I do a regression analysis, this person has a 47% chance of enrolling and this person has a 72% chance of enrollment. We are absolutely not doing that. Although, like Terry said, it may be that Ms. Cantrell has called us and said, this student, this is the top school or one of the top 2 schools. Or somebody really hit it off with an admissions officer in an interview, and we're doing that, is she in, is she out? And the Massachusetts reader is gonna say, that is the coolest kid, I really like her. So in that case, it's gonna help you. But what I worry about is students getting the signal that they have to leave calculus class 4 times in the fall semester to show the demonstrated interest. You know what? If you're going to have all that demonstrated interest in a C- in calculus, it's not going to help you.
And just to add to that, authentic interest, like emailing me every 2 days just without anything to say, that's not real interest. But if you do have a question and it's you that reaches out to me instead of your parent, or you might be looking at schools farther away, that might be harder to do the classic visit, or they might not be visiting your school. There's still ways to connect in authentic ways, but don't become the stalker applicant, but authentic interest is okay.
That's a great tip. Tip of the night, don't be the stalker applicant. I like that. So to move away from, oh, sorry,
Yeah,
Steve.
sorry.
I keep interrupting you, my dear.
It's
So
okay.
sorry.
It's okay.
Next time.
I just want to make a couple of points on the question as it's written here. Campus visits, interviews, meaning emails, great point, about demonstrated interest. So for you seniors, how many last year or this past summer got in the car with a parent or both and your family and went around to different colleges and did campus tours? Show of hands. How many, okay, thank you. How many of you actually enjoyed that? Because you're sitting next to your folks, aren't you? That is, from my experience in working at different schools, that is the hardest part about this entire college search process, is putting the miles on the car, okay? Students, you're walking around campus, it's a nice day, it could be raining, whatever. The first question you get in the car, what'd you think of that one? What'd you think of that one? That was nice, wasn't it? That was nice, wasn't it? And then you go on to the next school. That was great. And then you start comparing, okay? That's the tough part. Getting out and putting the miles on the car is the most crucial part. And there's no stopping now that we're in the first or second month of school, okay? This is the roller coaster ride. And you are leaving the gate, okay? And going out and seeing those tours, seeing the different types of campuses. We have 4 different types of campuses represented here. For those of you who have attended college fairs, and Mrs. Cantrell has a list of local ones that are coming up and some that have already passed, but it's an opportunity for you to go and visit with college representatives and learn a little bit more about the school, even if it's just to pick up a brochure. Find out where's the address, instead of surfing surfing to find out where is that campus located. Do they have my major? Getting away from the whole data thing. Yeah, let's talk about this face to face. Okay, this is still a personal thing, an interpersonal part of your decision. It's crucial. To the point of personal interviews, I, at a previous institution, flew all the way to California a couple of times to just do personal interviews with interested students. We would take notes, and then we would bring them back to campus, and we would insert those notes in the application. It does show demonstrated interest, doesn't guarantee that we are your top choice, but I highly encourage you, if you have the opportunity, if you are visiting the college campuses, and if you have the opportunity to meet with an admissions officer or counselor or whoever it can be, tour guide, extra 5 minutes with the tour guide. Take it. You've traveled all the way there to the campus. Take the opportunity and ask them questions, and maybe they will ask you some. Some of the questions I would start off with, how would your teacher describe you? How would your friends describe you? What's your favorite class? What's your hardest class? Why are you interested in this particular major? If you are undecided, we all have that too. We have that as a major, undecided. So, and it's it's our most popular major, that's right. Okay, undecided. If you don't know, that's fine. It's paperwork to change your major. Okay, but the point is, take advantage of the personal interview opportunities if they are presented. And I know Mrs. Cantrell has a lot of resources to help you, and the guidance staff here, they have a lot of resources to help you as you progress through the end of the fall and into the winter, and as you go and you make those final visits. And then in the springtime, after you're going on the roller coaster of the admission process, then you're going to find out which schools were I admitted to. And then you're going to want to go take a second look or a first look. Very important to, again, continue the interpersonal relationships with those schools. Okay, you are not just a name and an application on a computer screen anymore. Okay?
The roller coaster. I like that analogy. It's good. So I think there's been a huge push from kids. They feel a lot of panic that they need to apply early. Regular decision, the January, February deadlines. We've seen a lot more kids. It's November 1, it's November 15. They feel like they need to apply early. Can you talk about, if you offer early action, early decision, how the processes differ from regular decision? Is there a different way that you're looking at students? Can you kind of expand upon that?
At Clark, we offer early decision, early action, and regular decision. So we do offer all three choices. To be perfectly honest, at Clark, early decision is a very small population of students. We have a lot of our families that need to be able to compare financial aid packages, so early decision doesn't make a lot of sense for them. But there are students that want to know their decision early, and so early action is a good option there. We read applications the exact same way in all three cases. We have the same exact merit scholarship standards in all three rounds. So for us, it's really up to the student what makes the most sense for them. They're not going to be at a disadvantage in terms of admissions or merit scholarship or need-based financial aid if they choose to wait till January 15th. And over half of our applications do come in regular decision. So very small early decision, about 40% of our applications are early action, and the rest of them come in regular decision. And we really try to keep everything standard against all three, so it's not trying to game the system or figure out where the odds are the best. Just whatever makes the most sense in your timeline is fine with us.
So Smith offers binding early decision and regular decision, those two options. And we've seen the interest in early decision grow over time. I do think it has something to do with the increasing selectivity of college and students really wanting to lower the flame on the anxiety of the admissions process. For us, we evaluate them in the same way. If you want to compare financial aid awards, or if you're looking to compare predominantly merit-based awards, it's not a good option for you. But Smith commits to meeting the full demonstrated need of all of the students we admit. So if you're looking for need-based aid, we're going to give the same package to students we admit early decision versus regular decision. I guess thinking back to the question on demonstrated interest, this is a place where we're a little bit more generous in the sense that we know you're going to come if we admit you. So if you're right there on the bubble and we're confident that your trend is good, you will get an offer of admission. Also, Smith, which has got incredibly generous financial aid, and 60% of our students receive financial aid, but we are need conscious, meaning if we run out of financial aid at the end of the regular decision process, we're going to have to take your need into consideration, and that isn't as much the case in early decision. So our admit rates in early decision are a little bit higher than they are in regular decision.
So at UConn, our priority deadline is December 1st, and if students apply by December 1st, they will be considered for merit and academic scholarships. Doesn't mean you can't apply after, but we have the cutoff of December 1st. Other schools will have a similar setup. Our application deadline, final application deadline is January 15th. Now, can you apply after January 15th? Yes, but it will be marked late, and we will get to it whenever we get to it, okay? But in the schools in which you are interested in, start making a list now, use an Excel spreadsheet. What's the application deadline? What is the application deadline for scholarship consideration, merit scholarship consideration for your schools? And I think we're about to jump into financial aid, so I'll stop there.
Absolutely. So the financial aid piece of things, you've referenced scholarships, if you apply early, there might be a little bit more money coming your way. Can you talk about the role of financial aid, if any, in the admission process? So do you look at that? Do you consider that when you're deciding who to accept or not?
So at Westfield, we do not look at your financial aid status when we're looking at your application. We're simply looking at the merits of your overall application. Now, when you do apply, you are considered for merit scholarships. Being a state school, we have a limited number of merit scholarships, so the standards are high, but at the same time, they're on a first-come, first-served basis. So applying early means that you will be considered for scholarship money, and if you meet the criteria, you would be awarded something. I will say that the nice thing about coming to a state university here in Massachusetts is if you've done well on your MCAS and you've gotten the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, or there's another one.
Coplick, Stanley Z. Coplick Certificate of Mastery with Distinction.
Yes. If you do well on that, that's a tuition waiver. Now, tuition at the state universities is a little different. For us, it's $970, so it's $1,000 off on your bill. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you consider that's over $4,000 over 4 years, it actually does work out to be a nice little chunk of change that you can save. So, but for the admission process, when we are looking at your application specifically for Westfield, we are not looking at any of your financial aid information when we're making our decision.
So Audrey used the term need conscious for some students towards the end of the process. And I would say we're similar, not in terms of the timing of the application, but in terms of where the student falls in our process. We do not meet full need for all of our students. And the higher the student is academically, the closer we come to meeting full need. So that does mean for some of the borderline students that we might want to admit, but we know if we admit them, we're not going to be able to give them enough financial assistance to even make this a realistic possibility. We become need aware in those cases and choose not to admit them. I'd like to say that that's trying to be nice, but it's not. The ideal is that we would be meeting full need, but we just can't do that. So we try not to put students in difficult situations where if they choose to come to Clark, they are going to take on a debt load that we do not feel comfortable burdening our students on. So we make the need aware decision not to admit students. It's a very small sliver of the applicant pool, but it is there for some students.
And I would say that for Smith, again, too, it's a very small portion of the applicant pool. And in terms of process, I mean, if anybody needs financial aid and you're worried about this need conscious, don't apply for admission and apply for financial aid by the stated deadlines, because I can assure you after the deadline, we will be out of money. But the way it works at Smith is that we're reading the admissions applications in the admission office, we're reading the financial aid applications in the financial aid office. So we're making the evaluation of your candidacy need blind, if you will, in the sense that we don't know what it is, we're just evaluating your admissions potential. Same for Clark, I can hear that. And then at the end, we're gonna kind of put that information together and see if we have enough money. And what I can tell you is since the recession, we haven't had enough money, so we've had to make some painful choices. Here's the thing though, for Smith, if we think you're qualified, we would have liked to have admitted you, but we don't have the funding, we'll place you on the wait list. And for Smith, if we're admitting a student from the wait list, we're going to admit that student with meeting the full demonstrated financial needs. So we're fortunate to have those resources. And so if we're going to offer you admission and you qualify for aid, based on our formula, not your sense of it, but our formula, which is a common one shared by most private institutions, we will meet that full need.
point on financial aid and the process itself. So Mike and I work for public institutions. I think I'm correct on this, we only require the FAFSA program, which is a dreaded document that is very long. Parents, I send my sympathies. Private schools may also require the CSS profile, even longer, okay? So again, when you're creating, and hopefully if you have done this, great. If you have not done this, highly recommend doing this, creating yourself a spreadsheet, what forms are required for the schools in which I am applying to for financial aid, not only admissions, because that's a whole nother page, but start a new page for financial aid. Is it the FAFSA, or is it the FAFSA and CSS profile? Is there something else? Is there another phantom form that a school is going to require? Getting to the need blind versus need aware, just thinking of the calendar year in the admissions offices. It's late September right now. Students are applying, or beginning to apply to colleges. I would make the argument on a general basis, we would like to see your applications completed and submitted to guidance and your transcript requests somewhere between Halloween and Thanksgiving. Get it done by Thanksgiving. Get them all done by then, okay? Same thing with having your ducks in a row with financial aid paperwork. As we review your applications, it takes us all winter to go through those. Some offices are quicker than others, some have different methods, but through the winter, everybody hunkers down and tries to select their class. So we can say in December and November that, yeah, we are need blind. But, and I'm taking the UConn hat off because this is not necessarily the practice at our school, but in another school I've seen this happen, where in March, if we are short of our goal and we see that a student is borderline, and we also see the financial records, as it was alluded to earlier, if we think a student or a family can afford coming here, we will go ahead and admit and make, maybe add a little couple $1,000 scholarship to, which is to sweeten the deal. Okay, so here we are in September. Those answers may change in March.
Just to plan ahead, the FAFSA and the CSS profile will both become available on Sunday, October 1st. As Audrey said, pay attention to the deadlines, because if you miss those deadlines, it will impact what financial aid offers are coming out from schools. And for planning purposes, it's the 2016 tax information and income information. So you already should have that, so you can start digging it out now and just have everything together so that you're not, ours is due January 15th. If you start the process on January 15th, you're going to be late. So just plan early. The same thing with your students with their essay. If it's due on January 15th, don't write your first draft on January 14th. Start early and plan ahead.
Are people aware of the net price calculators? So if you're really curious about what it might look at for the schools that you're interested in, do complete the net price calculators and have those tax forms with you, because garbage in, garbage out.
So just a few final questions before we open it up to question and answer. What part of the admissions process is the most misunderstood? Is there anything that needs a little clarity from you folks who are living it and breathing it for the folks out here?
I think that often students and parents feel like we're making admissions decision comparing one student against another. And so often you're thinking, she got in and she didn't. I'm using she because I'm at a women's college, but she or he got in and she didn't. And you're going to try and figure out why. You're going to try and second guess us. And then particularly for those of us who are practicing holistic admission, we're looking at this based on a complete set of characteristics that fit the needs of our institution. If I'm a student, the college admissions process is all about me. If I'm an admissions officer, the college admissions office, the admissions process is about crafting a class for my institution. And so you don't really know that what my institution really needed was a center for the basketball team, or an oboist, or an engineering major, or whatever it might be. And so I think thinking it's sort of one against the other, the fact of the matter is it's filling a class amongst a full range of applicants. And so it's impossible not to take our decisions personally. I understand that. But really, when we're making these decisions, it's about us, not about you.
And those institutional needs change every year. So one year you're wanting this particular niche filled, and then the next year it might be something totally different. And if they had applied a year later, maybe they would have fit the criteria. But, you know, such is life, and you're crafting that class. Right.
I'll never get in there. You can go ahead and dream and go ahead and apply. Sometimes you never know. Sometimes you just never know how smart you are, and how smart we think you are, and how smart we hope you are. And it's not always smart, talented. How great of a citizen we think you are. We think that you are going to be. Doesn't matter, it matters who you are here, but we only see what is on paper. From the recommendations, we only see what is in your essay, we only see what courses you're taking in your grades. We don't know if you have the greatest smile in the world. We don't know if you voluntarily, help students who need help in class, outside of class. We won't know that. We certainly hope you would, and sometimes we turn that hope into faith, and that faith turns into an admit letter. So you never know. Obviously, being realistic, not every applicant from Tantascwa will get into Harvard. It's just not going to happen. Okay? But again, everything's all tied together. Going out and putting the miles on and visiting the schools. Okay? Another item that is misunderstood gets to the finances. Okay? You are on this ride where you are looking at other schools, and this is going to go twists and turns and loops and backwards and God knows what else. Okay? You can get into, you can apply to 12 schools, maybe you receive admit letters from 3 of them. That's a reality check right there. Okay? Now you recenter yourself. Go out and visit those 3 schools and see if there are other institutions that are willing to take another application. They're out there. Go and visit those schools. And never, ever count out a school like Quinsigamond Community College, which is, for many families, the only affordable choice out of your 3 schools or 4 schools. Okay, been there. And I work with that population at my institution. Okay, there's no harm in going to Quinsigamond, Holyoke, wherever, and then transferring to a 4-year school. I know Mike's institution takes on a lot of transfer students. We do as well. We're both on the big state umbrellas in our respective states, and we work with those populations very closely. And obviously the private schools as well. Don't think that they don't. They all, they all have relationships, and we all go and visit those schools just like we visit high schools. Okay, we go to transfer fairs all over the state of Massachusetts. Every school tries to get in there as many times as they can. Okay? Stay positive. Stay positive. And parents, this will not end until maybe 1 month into the first semester of the student's freshman year. This will not end. Okay, so just be prepared. As soon as you think you've got the admit letter, then the financial aid information comes in, and then you're up here, and then wow, you come flying down. Okay, the reality hits. Okay, and then from there it's, all right, we're coming in for the landing, and we're going to figure out what's the reality here and what school can we actually go to. Okay, and then it's May 1st, and you have to decide by May 1, where are we going? And send your tuition deposit in by then. Okay? Outside of early decision, early action. May 1, and then it's orientation over the summer. Everybody comes to campus for orientation. Meet with your academic advisors. Everything's great, the sun's out. You pick your classes, kind of review, and then the bursar's office is calling, like, the first bill is due here. Okay, it's time for that. Again, down you go again, okay, with the reality. Okay, and then you move in. And then as soon as the car leaves campus and the student's there, guaranteed there's text. How's it going? How's it going? How's the first 10 minutes at school? Okay, how's the first day at school? Did you meet anybody yet? No, I was in the bathroom. No. Okay, this will not end. And it's a shared experience. Seniors, your family is as invested as you are in this. They are. And they, come Thanksgiving, when you come home, people have been asking them for a couple months now, how's it going? How's it going? Great. Well, and then Thanksgiving comes, and we hope that's still the answer, and if it is, fantastic. If it's not, well, then that's another discussion to have at the Thanksgiving Day table, or away from it, okay? But it's a process, and use the guidance staff, use the staff here. They're very experienced at helping students navigate this year. Cannot say that enough.
What advice do you have for the parents on their role? Steve touched upon this, but the rest of you, do you have any thoughts for the parents?
Remember that it's your student that's going to college and not you. That one I can't seem to get through enough. And I'll come at this from a different perspective. I'm actually doing a lot of data work in our office, and I'm the guy that's doing a lot of work with accounts. The number of parents that are just creating accounts on my website and signing up their students for tours, yeah, I get it. It's way easier than trying to get your son or daughter to do it. Trust me, my mother probably dragged me to a couple of different places. But the point is, you definitely want to make sure that they are taking the lead on a lot of this, that they're the ones that are filling out the inquiry cards at the college fairs or when you go for the tour, that they're the ones that are filling out the applications, writing the essays. Your job really should be more along the lines of guiding. And you really want to make sure that, hey, did you do that application? Let's take a look at it together. I can help you proofread it. You also might want to be the one that says, hey, I know you've got your list of schools, but did you think about adding a couple of these ones that are, maybe a little bit closer to home or further away from home if you want to try something different. So it's okay to be the person that kind of nudges them and points them in different directions, but definitely let them take the lead, because as Steve said, come September 1st, Labor Day weekend, you're dropping them off and that's it. It's now their journey. They're the ones that are going to take it from there. So they have to be sure that they've made the right decision for them. So make sure you're helping with guiding them and make sure you're getting them in the right direction. But most importantly, make sure that they're the ones that are taking the lead.
Can I do this really quick? This is for parents once you have dropped them off. So any of you who've had Mr. Anderson for either history or econ know that we have 3 kids, and then our youngest is a senior in college. So it was really hard leaving, Skippy, he tells stories in econ about Skippy, our son that's allergic to peanut butter. But anyway, it's really hard to get used to the kids being out of the house, and it's really quiet. And then it's a whole lot of fun. And they come home at Thanksgiving and you say, we want our house back.
I would just add on to Mike's tips about guiding and nudging. Don't make every conversation between now and May 1st or September 1st when they're going to college about college. It's an important part of this year, absolutely, but set aside time for it. I know what worked really well in my family is that we set time, Sunday evenings, that if my mom and dad had questions about where I was in the process, that was the time to ask. And if they asked me on any other day, I said I'd talk to you Sunday. And it just helped me feel like it wasn't overwhelming everything. And they were really good about making sure that on Thanksgiving it wasn't, what are you going to major in? And even for my other family, because that can be overwhelming. So talk about it. I'd say sometimes you have to have some realistic conversation with your students. But one of the hardest things to talk to about your kids might be financial, but it's an important conversation to have if there are financial limitations within the family. Don't wait until May 1st and they're saying, I want to deposit at Clark or I want to deposit at Smith, and you say, I can't afford that. We can't afford that. Have those conversations early, and I know that they're really difficult, but don't have it all the time.
That's a great point, great advice. So last words of wisdom for our nervous seniors, just about to hop on the roller coaster. They're on the roller coaster, right, Steve? Are they on it right now? They've left the gate, right? They're on. So what are your last kind of words to them?
I would like just to remind everybody that there's national surveys that are done, and 75% of students report that they're enrolled in their first choice school. Most kids, this works out okay. And if it doesn't, this is not a 4-year prison sentence. My sister transferred twice. She ended up at Westfield State and loved her experience there. It took her a little while to find that place. And that's an okay thing. But for the most people, they end up enrolling in the school that they graduate from, and they end up having a really great experience. So that's, I think, the most important thing to keep in your mind through all of this, is that it's going to be okay. And there's not the one magic school. There's thousands of schools. You're not trying to find that one perfect school, and that's the only one you can be happy at. There are a lot of great places where you can thrive.
All right, Kendra, I promised I'd do it, so I'm gonna support what Terry said. So another way to look at that, that there's not only one great school. Look at, I'm married to Mr. Anderson. I have been married to Mr. Anderson for 33 and a half years. And we are largely very happily married, and he knows I'm gonna say this, right? I'm not complaining about him, but I gotta believe there are at least 6 other guys in the United States of America that I could have been happily married to for 33 years. It happens.
That was a good one. I love that story, Bria.
Just the last thing, you don't have to know exactly what you're going to do for the rest of your life now. Just because you're thinking about becoming an elementary school teacher or a nurse or going into business marketing doesn't mean that that's where you're going to necessarily end up. I don't think, none of us went to college for college admissions, so let me put that out there. And I'm 32, yes. I still have that conversation with myself. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? So, although now it kind of factors in retirement, so that's more along the lines of how much longer do I have to go. But, so don't feel the pressure to try to figure out exactly what you need to do with the rest of your life right now. You will figure it out eventually, and if you're undecided, honestly, as Steve said, that is really okay. Don't feel the pressure to make a decision right now. I have a cousin who's a sophomore at Salem State. She's changed her major 3 times already. So it's okay, you will get there, you will figure it out eventually, so don't put that pressure on yourself right now.
Any last roller coaster analogies, Mr. Dunn?
I had another analogy I was going to use, but I will not. I'll leave it to them.
I'd say by the picture at the end, right? By the picture at the end.
By the picture of yourself on the roller coaster. That's the advice. All right, well, let's open it up to some questions from the audience. If there's something we haven't covered that you're anxious to know about, I can come to the mic with